what's going on here just cannot be captured in our concepts. In other words, it transcends anything that we might think it is, any way that we might try to define it, any way that we might try to encapsulate it conceptually, linguistically. It just eludes capture, basically. And one of the simplest ways to see that is the case, and also to understand also how impossible it is to define the moments of our life, is to simply notice how reality doesn't hold still. And these clouds that we're seeing here, the beautiful, ceaseless movement of the clouds, is really very much like what every experience is like. The clouds, we could say, as they move, we might say that they're seemingly taking shapes and forms, assuming shapes and forms, and yet, because of the dynamism of their nature, they're never actually becoming anything fixed or formed. It's very curious how that is. And our experience is exactly like that, in the sense of it never holding still, seemingly. And feel the way that is. Feel the ever shifting, ever drifting, ever transforming nature of every aspect of experience. It may be subtle, it may be very not so subtle, very obvious, but it is the case that what's here is never quite taking a definitive, fixed, static form owing to its dynamism. Take any of the senses, sounds. It's pure movement, isn't it? The shape of the sounds that are arising, just like the clouds, are transforming. They're on the move. They're not stopping. Here it is. Here's the sound. I can look at it. I can see its shape and form. Because what appears in terms of sound, what appears in terms of light, what appears in terms of any aspect of experience, vanishes as it appears. And that's not philosophy, that's our actual experience. We can't really say whether the moment is appearing or disappearing. Are the shapes that the clouds seem to be assuming, are they appearances? There's the shape appearing, or as it's appearing, is it disappearing in the sense of becoming something else? In that which is seemingly in a state of constant becoming is never strangely becoming anything because it's on the move. This is the natural drifting, the fluid dynamism of everything, of us. And this is why, well, we could say one of the reasons why reality is transcendental, not capable of being determined. Oh, here it is. This is what reality is. This is the definition. This is the conclusion of what this moment is. Because that conclusion is taken away. That definition is swept away in that what we defined as the shape of the moment, the shape of the cloud of this moment, isn't here anymore. Just feel that the fluid nature of what's here, how it's slipping away. It's very strange because it seems like there's all these things that we have names for. This is the strange paradox of our lives. We have names for so much of it, right? Names for what's being perceived. And yet, how can you name something that's moving? Describe some aspect of your experience and it vanishes. I mean, in this sense, this may sound odd, but there is no experience. And yet there's only experience. There's no experience in the sense of you can't grasp hold of it because it slips away. It's not here long enough. It's not here long. It's not here for any time. Because it's not stopping. Just look at the clouds. I could even stop the movie for a moment, and then we're just left with our perception of, say, well, there, now we froze it. We stopped reality, the movement of reality, right? So now we're perceiving and we can describe what's being seen because we froze the image, right? But of course, what's being experienced as the stopped or frozen image is itself alive. The perception is alive. Your perception of what's here, just look at what's here. It's not, your perception's not holding still. It's dancing. The perception is dancing around. It's seeing different aspects, different shades. You're never looking at it the same way. It's not holding still. See this, notice this. It's still moving. Maybe the movement is subtler. It's a movement of perception. See, the perception of something is also an appearance, isn't it? The perception of, there's a cloud that's shaped like this. It's a perception, and that perception is an arising, an appearance. The perception appears. But the appearance doesn't appear and then just hold still. It appears, and then there's another appearance and another appearance. I wouldn't really say it's that way. I mean, it's not that way. I can't say how it is. That's the challenge of language. It is not sayable, just as I'm pointing out. It can't be captured in any of my words, any of our words. Maybe the words and the concepts, indicate something. Hence their existence and their utility, seemingly to communicate, to convey something about what's being encountered. But if I were to ask you, what are you experiencing right now? Anything that you might come up with linguistically to try to convey your experience would just, it would just not be true in the sense that, again, what you're describing is no longer here. Look at your, what we call thinking as a phenomena. The thoughts are just like the clouds. They're vanishing as they arise. They're disappearing as they appear, without our having to do anything to make them disappear. The thoughts just vanish. They just morph, shapeshift, transform. Everything lets go of itself. Its very nature is to let go and become the next version of reality, in a sense. And everything that we might think of as what we are, whether it's the sense of a body, the sense of a subject, the sense of a personality, sense of a body mind, all of that is also this dynamic appearing, isn't it? And so we are, like everything else, cloud-like in our ever transformative, ever morphing nature. So we seem to be living in this astonishing paradox that something undeniably seems to be present as experience. Let's call it experience. And yet the presence has no stability to it. It's just constantly leaving, and yet always here. How do we make up a story about that? How do we tell a tale about this that is no longer here? It's hard to tell a story about it, isn't it? But there's something so magnificent somehow, this creativity of life, the moment is somehow being birthed. It's just here, and yet it can't be found, in the sense of it's gone the minute we go to look for it, right? And yet it just keeps the appearance seems constant, the appearing. And it appears as what we imagine as things, as phenomena that are findable and nameable and describable, right? Hence our language and our concepts. But it's mirage-like in the sense that it absolutely looks like a world of things, a world of objects, worlds of phenomena that have stability. All of you. I can see you in a sense as phenomena that have a kind of stability and coherence, right? And recognizable patterns. And yet when I look again, and I look with more, a little more closely, get up close to the phenomena, and I feel the dynamic nature of my perceiving of these phenomena, then the stability just falls apart, and it just doesn't hold together. And in that sense, what's here is mirage-like. Which actually doesn't mean it's somehow not, in other words, it doesn't negate seeing its mirage-like nature, its ever-vanishing nature, in the sense that it's never here long enough to become anything, owing to its cloud-like dynamism, doesn't keep us from enjoying this flow of reality, even if we can't grasp hold of it. It's like enjoying the dream, even though there's a recognition of the dreamlike nature of reality, enjoying it nevertheless. And in fact, seeing its dreamlike nature brings about this sense of the lightness of it, the beauty of it, the mystery of it, the undivided nature of it. And from the standpoint of finding kind of freedom from the things that often feel to be sources of suffering and lack and incompleteness and something's wrong, this discovery that everything has this transcendental, fluid, unfindable nature owing to its dynamic, transient impermanence, cuts through that. This is better than that. This is more reality than that. It's all reality. It's all infinity. Sadness and joy, they're equal in the sense of they're both transcendental and indefinable. They're both cloud-like, aren't they? Sadness and joy. Yeah, they appear as very distinctive, definable flavors and qualities of experience. Incredibly distinct, sadness and joy. But penetrate either of them, and you arrive at the same place, which is you don't find anything there that can be pinned down. You never can come to the conclusion of what either sadness is or joy is. And so there's nothing there that can bind us. There's nothing in any apparent appearance that binds us, because what's there is cloud-like and formless, literally. Everything is free of its apparent form, transcends its apparent form. And yet the forms aren't obliterated in that recognition. That's the magic show of life. The emptiness dancing as all these apparent forms. The infinity dancing as all this apparent finiteness. The indefinable dancing as all these definitions. and descriptions. One reality that can be experienced as stable and definable. And then when we look again, we see its cloud-like, indefinable, unstable nature. Well, which is it? Is it unstable or is it stable? Is it indefinable or definable? Is it infinite or is it finite? Can't really say. Both of those perspectives, reality can be experienced from either of those perspectives. But as a rule, I think it's fair to say that our the experience of what we call suffering as humans comes out of that, the way in which we're defining reality. We define the problems into existence. We define limitation into existence. We define incompleteness into existence. We define lack into existence. We define bondage and identification, all these things we imagine we have to become free of as spiritual seekers. They're defined into existence. Because when you look at something like that we call bondage or contraction or identification, look, and you'll see it's just like a cloud. It can't be found. So where is the bondage? Where is the limitation? Where is the lack? And where is the one that is supposedly experiencing bondage and limitation and lack? That can't be found either. Because we are cloud-like, like all other apparent phenomena. Ultimately unfindable as something that can be pinned down. There it is, there I am. We're just a bottomless, ever-changing, fluid, ungraspable, unnameable radiance.